And
sorry.
Thanks, Anna. Morning, everybody. We've got a big week to so we're really excited about Net Zero Week. I think it's that opportunity really to be involved and get you involved in Net Zero. It's such a big subject. So I'm going to just open with a couple of slides just to talk about the format and what's going to happen over the week, and hopefully you'll be able to see that soon.
It's on speaker view. Oh yeah, we can see it.
You can see it, okay?
Yep. And then that's on speaker view. Yep.
Around, right. Okay. Doesn't matter how many times you practice. It always
Perfect.
goes. Yep. So welcome everybody, and welcome to our third annual Net Zero Week. It's designed to fill a gap, I think, that we felt existed in this space. Many of you have heard us speak before about how big Net Zero is, how big WHQS2 is going to be big. This is not, when we've done change in homes, and we've upgraded homes, windows and things like that, we've changed a toilet for another toilet or kitchen units for different kitchen units. It was still fundamental the same homes, albeit better and warmer and things like that. But Net Zero can involve big changes to how we live. And it's really exciting, real opportunity to make warmer homes, to make them cheaper to heat and to live in. And there's going to be so much opportunities, I think, we need those opportunities for people to influence and have their say in placemaking as well. When we move to a WHQS2 and new homes as well, we need to consider local planning, we need to consider water savings, EV charging, all these things as our society adapts to climate change. And there's various clever people working on that, with Welsh Government support through ORP, but we felt that transparency was needed. Why TPAS has always fought for that tenant voice and the tenants and frontline staff together discussing these subjects, not just left to the clever people in the background looking at all the specifications and the technical side of it. We want that transparency, and we want you to have your say in it, and that's why this week exists. A quick mention, for the third year in a row, Cero, I'm delighted that Cero is sponsoring this week. Right from the start, they've shared the same values, tenant voice, transparency that we share, and their support really helps make this viable for us. Your hosts today, some of you will know myself. I've been with TPAS now for nearly 7 years, and Hannah joined us last year as our Net Zero engagement lead, really helping with that knowledge share, seeing best practice, getting tenants involved in Net Zero and in this subject. And this role was not just a first for us, it was actually the first amongst the 4 nations, amongst the other TPASs. So along, with all of you, we are at the front of that tenant and frontline conversation about Net Zero, and I think it's really important. So we've got a big week coming up. I think there's 8 sessions over the week. Welsh Government colleagues this afternoon talking about WHQS2, and there's a chance to have some say in just some of the final tuning of that. We've got retrofit, we've got sort of customer experience, we're looking at new builds, careers, some wonderful opportunities that we really need to make sure we get, and use our purchasing power within Wales, within this, to really make sure our young people are skilled up to tackle and to take advantage of the Net Zero challenge. And how we fund it, that's a whole, well, it is a subject in its own right. That's why we've given it Thursday morning, how we fund it. And then we've finished the week with a tenant-only session where we want your views and listen to what you have to say around the whole Net Zero stuff. So the session, there's a Q&A box down the bottom. You'll see it a bit clearer in a minute. Please do use the Q&As. That's where we'll take questions. There is a chat on the side, but we'll be leading with that Q&A. But do use the chat on the side, say hello. The slides will be available afterwards. We're recording this. Last year, we made a playlist of all the different sessions for those who signed up for the week, and actually got some really good volumes, and some tenant groups showed it in tenant sessions afterwards, back in their community, to get a wider audience. So do look out for that. And I also just want to mention our next big event coming up is our Creating Great Communities Conference. We really want to motivate, inspire you to think about how we make better communities. We've got some great speakers, really, as you'd expect from TPAS, practical case studies, real good community people that will inspire you. So again, look out for that on the 5th of July. And new speakers and things are being added all the time. I also want to mention we've got a new net zero knowledge exchange. The sector's done a couple of attempts at this. Other people have looked at how do we bring people together to discuss best practice sharing, things like that. But after discussions with some people, we felt people were asking us, TPAS were the people to arrange and host something for frontline workers who are in this space. So again, look out for that event. And if you're a tenant going, well, what about tenants? We've run some tenant networks recently. Some of you might have been at our net zero themed one. And we're hoping to bring a new platform out, maybe it'll be about September time, for tenants to be able to share and discuss net zero. So today's session, why is Wales striving to be net zero? You know, where are we right now? And what's the journey ahead? And who better really to do that than the Minister herself, Julie James? I got a long biog from the civil service, but apologies, I'm not going to read it all out. I think for us, the story starts really, it jumps to December 2018 when she was appointed Minister for Housing and Local Government. And what a start she made. I remember her first speech at TIE. It was bold, it was direct, and Elizabeth and myself, Elizabeth TPAS, were coming out going, wow, this is going to be fun. And Julie was appointed Minister of Climate Change in May 2021. I think that's really important. It's a big responsibility, but for many of us here, you know, climate change starts at housing. It starts with the communities, the placemaking. And to be honest, without further ado, can I invite the Minister for Climate Change, Julie James, to speak to us as the opening session of our Net Zero Week. Just get rid of this slide. Sorry. There we are. Right.
Diolch, David.
Bore
da. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today as part of this week's annual Net Zero Week. I'll offer some wider thoughts around housing and our contribution to tackling carbon reduction and reducing the impact of cost of living increases. The climate and nature emergencies are not the next global crisis. They are absolutely already upon us, and our vision and ambition is to plan a better, fairer and greener future for us all. The 2020s need to be the decisive decade of action in tackling the climate emergency. In March 2021, the Senedd formally committed Wales to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Since then, we've published Net Zero Wales, our emissions reduction plan, focused on how we will achieve our second carbon budget. And following additional pledges and case studies, we republished Working Together to Reach Net Zero, which recognises and showcases the all-Wales approach to tackling climate change, with pledges and case studies from every corner of our country. And then last December, we published the final statement for the first carbon budgetary period, covering 2016 to 2020, as required under the Environment Wales Act 2016, which shows that Wales met both the first carbon budget and the interim target. As we transition to net zero, we must ensure it is planned effectively and equitably, not simply protecting industries and their employees, but strengthening them, developing skills for future markets, and ensuring the most vulnerable in our society are not unfairly burdened with the costs of change. It's why we launched the Just Transition Call for Evidence, which closed just in last March. We're pleased we received over 100 responses from a wide range of organisations, including businesses, academia, third sector organisations, trade unions and community groups. That evidence is currently being analysed and will help us develop our longer-term policy framework with actions to be developed right across the government. The response to the call will be published in the autumn, and the framework is due to be published in early 2024. Achieving what we call a just transition to net zero is essential. We must take every Welsh citizen with us and leave no one behind as we move to a greener, fairer, better future. And of course, housing is absolutely front and centre and has a really critical role in this. This government has also made clear that the environment will be at the heart of our decision making. In creating this Ministry for Climate Change, we brought together environment, energy, housing and regeneration, planning and transport. This gives us a real opportunity and all the critical levers to develop the sustainable communities the people of Wales want and need. Our land division works closely with partners to develop exemplar sites as we look to establish a new benchmark for affordable housing development. One such example is the Gwynvine development overlooking the Lougher Estuary near Swansea. Gwynvine was originally a joint venture housing development between Pobble Group and Coastal Housing Association for 144 low-carbon new homes developed on land jointly owned by Welsh Government and Swansea Council. It's benefited from our innovative housing programme funding, and it's now being led by Pobble. Our new collaborative engagement is delivering a high-quality, cohesive, sustainable community designed using rural planning principles and led by a strong green infrastructure and placemaking ideology. The design approach provides for a strong character and a sense of place that seeks to encourage residents to spend time outdoors, engaging with their environment and with one another. This will be a highly sustainable scheme, enabling combustion-free living, embracing cutting-edge energy technology, and ensuring that the wildlife of the area is protected and integrated. The aim is to deliver a low-carbon village promoting healthier living with attractive, characterful new homes in a landscape setting which capitalises on the stunning location of the site and its panoramic views of the Lougher Estuary and the Gower Peninsula. I also appreciate that, as far as possible, materials and components have been sourced locally within Wales to reduce carbon emissions linked to transportation and to support the local economy. But I also know the partners are not finished there. Working with Pobble, our land division have identified an adjacent site as a rural exception site. This is now going through the appropriate planning process, but I'm hopeful it will deliver a further 49 affordable homes for general needs and supported living. Gwynvine 2 represents a unique opportunity to provide a sustainable expansion of the new neighbourhood at Gwynvine with high quality, low carbon, affordable homes in a tranquil landscape setting. Linking with what is now the phase 1 development, Gwynvine 2 will be a place with an overtly rural character, an attractive and well-connected place that encourages healthy lifestyles and promotes well-being. Open space, exercise and recreational opportunities are incorporated into the master plan, with community orchards and allotments providing opportunities for social interaction and offering a range of activities for people of all ages. High quality, low carbon homes at a range of sizes will combine with the latest thinking around energy efficiency and modern construction techniques to reduce the carbon footprint of the development and create a diverse and vibrant community, allowing a broad spectrum of needs to be met. The resulting extension of the neighbourhood at Gwynvine will therefore provide a modern neighbourhood that operates in harmony with its rural character and supports a more sustainable way of living. This is being achieved with Land Division and Pobble working collaboratively to optimise the benefits from the site and making the most of the location and fully delivering against my commitment to deliver exemplar sites. I'm really pleased about that development because what we hope is that it will then show what can be done to the rest of the development sector in Wales. And that's the idea, is to persuade our SMEs and our big developers that this is possible and it's beneficial and that people love it and that it's a really good business model. So, you know, housing is a really complicated space. It's getting more complicated by the day, it seems. And I'm sure we're all finding challenging personally and professionally. I certainly am. Our continued efforts to end homelessness in Wales, introduce legislative reforms and funding to support residents affected by building safety issues, and deliver on our ambitious low-carbon social housing targets, alongside the ever-increasing cost of living crisis for the people of Wales, and rapidly responding to the crisis in Ukraine and indeed other crises, most recently in Sudan, bring huge challenges for us all. But I know the housing sector will continue to rise to those challenges, as you have many, many times before. It's clear that our target to build 20,000 low-carbon homes for rent in the social sector is a challenge, and there are several factors that it could impact its delivery. This includes increased costs of building materials, the lengthened supply chain for a number of imported construction materials. But I'm really, really pleased that we've worked with and continue to work with housing associations, local authorities and contractors to mitigate these risks. This saw additional capital provided to support the delivery of affordable housing schemes with unprecedented increases in materials costs and £25 million in short-term interest-free loans to help cash flow within the sector. We absolutely rely on our social housing partners to deliver the homes Wales needs and to the standards we can be proud of. I want to build on those strong working relationships which have flourished under our joint commitment to deliver housing over the last 2 Senedd terms. Excuse me. It's crucial our focus on social housing remains. The social housing target for this term is more challenging, with a focus on homes being low carbon, kind to the climate, warm and affordable. And delivering on that commitment is more expensive than traditional social housing. But we have been clear as a government, the environment will be at the heart of our decision making. And I believe this is something we all agree is right and necessary. Actually, in addition, a green, sustainable, low carbon home is cheaper to run, better for your mental health, and makes for a better neighbour. So, these are absolutely the right things to do. We are absolutely determined Wales will be at the forefront of a new green revolution, and our new housing standards will have a good message to tell the world. We aim to create as much certainty as we can in our standards to drive up efficiency while driving down costs. This will enable us to go further, faster, and accelerate our efforts to decarbonise the housing stock. And I understand, David, that my officials are coming to talk to you about the new Welsh Housing Quality Standard later on today. So these new standards give us a good start to meet the decarbonisation challenge, but we don't claim to know all the answers to all the problems, and we certainly won't get everything right. But our low carbon housing journey is well underway. As I just say, you'd hear more about our work in this area later today from the team that are coming along. When we introduced the Optimised Retrofit Programme in 2019, it started to test approaches to explore the most effective and efficient ways of decarbonising the existing housing stock. Funding from ORP, as we call it, is targeted to be over 270 million over this term of government, with around 120 million of that invested to date. Last financial year, over 54 million was allocated to social landlords on a formula funding basis, ensuring that all social landlords in Wales have the opportunity to support via the programme. There's a commitment for at least a further 70 million a year for the next 2 years, and I'm pleased that the majority of housing associations in Wales are now participating in some way. Optimised Retrofit assesses each home individually to decide how to get it to net zero carbon by developing a bespoke building passport, setting out a timeline for when it will be achieved. The Optimised Retrofit Programme funds social landlords to test, learn and iterate how to effectively and efficiently decarbonise social homes before spreading those lessons out to the private rented sector and owner-occupiers. Already, landlords are assessing homes, upgrading insulation and installing new heating systems. In their material choices, they are being innovative, with insulation exploring natural wood fibre and lambswool alternatives to the toxic foams in widespread use right now. My intention is that the shared learning from the retrofit programme will serve as a catalyst to boost the pace of our decarbonisation journey, starting in social housing, sure, but then rolling out to all private homes. These schemes complement our other programmes. I've just extended the current NEST contract to the end of March 2024 to ensure there'll be no gap in provision between the new Warm Homes programme and the existing NEST programme. The new scheme will focus on supporting households least able to pay in the owner-occupier, private rented and housing cooperative sectors to ensure a just and affordable transition to low-carbon homes. Since 2010 to the end of March 2022, more than £420 million has been invested to improve home energy efficiency through the Warm Homes programme, benefiting more than 73,000 lower-income households, and more than 176,500 people have received energy efficiency advice through the Warm Homes programme since its launch in 2011. In 21-2, the Warm Homes Nest scheme provided 16,000 households with free impartial advice and signposting to a range of support services. Over 5,000 of the households received a package of free home energy efficiency measures, like a central heating system, a new boiler, or insulation. Our investment of 24.5 million last year in the Nest scheme saw 100% of installations completed by Wales-based installers, including 25 apprentices working on the scheme. These improvements are estimated to have saved households around £300 on their annual energy bills. Benefit entitlement checks resulted in a household averaging 3,254 potential increase in benefit take-up, increasing benefit take-up by nearly £950,000 last year. So, it's really helpful in a large number of different ways. And learning from that programme, we've made a number of improvements to the Warm Homes programme Nest scheme, investing in innovation through solar PV and the recent introduction of battery storage, enabling homes to use energy at source. We've got another initiative called Leasing Scheme Wales, which was launched in January 2022. It's worth over 30 million over 5 years, and it improves access to longer-term affordable housing in the private rented sector. It delivers security for tenants and confidence for landlords. The scheme is designed to support the most disadvantaged and potentially vulnerable individuals and households who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Tenants on the scheme will benefit from longer-term security of tenure at rents restricted to local housing allowance rates. Since its launch in 2022, January 2022, so just over a year and a half ago, 70 properties have been brought into the scheme and are tenanted, 43 of which were previously empty for 6 months or more. An additional 35 properties are tenanted through the Leasing Scheme Wales Pathfinder scheme, providing a total of 105 properties. To improve the energy efficiency of leasing scheme Wales properties, the Optimised Retrofit programme can provide additional grants of up to £5,000 a property. The grants must be used in addition to the leasing scheme Wales capital grant to improve the thermal efficiency of the building fabric that will insist in working towards an EPC Band C rating. And this funding is available until the end of March 2025. So this is my evangelical bit, David. I really hope everyone on this call this morning will spread that news out and we can get as many landlords as possible to come into the scheme. So this funding decarbonisation is a significant challenge for us all, including in social housing. There has to be further discussions about how on earth we're going to pay for it all. There's absolutely no way the government can do that on its own. So we're really looking to make sure that we have a good cohort of people working together with us to see how we can solve this conundrum. The funding solutions are likely to be a combination of contributions from the government, landlords, businesses, and indeed from individuals. No single group will be able to do it on its own, and no single solution will be appropriate. So we're working with sector representatives and many others, as well as the Future Generations Commissioner, to develop finance models that could support the decarbonisation work. And of course, by investing in decarbonisation, there are many job and training opportunities generated as well. We specifically aim to support Welsh SMEs and micro businesses to help them capitalise on green economic growth opportunities. We have 237,000 social homes to be decarbonised, plus 1.2 million private homes. So there are significant business opportunities in this area. This week is taking place at a time of huge challenge for people in Wales who are facing an unprecedented cost of living crisis fueled by soaring energy bills. Day-to-day prices, food, fuel, energy, clothes, travel costs, rent have been going up as inflation rises. Energy price rises are likely to hit lower income households disproportionately, as unfortunately they spend a higher proportion of their income on utility bills. We have called for increased payments under schemes like the Warm Homes Discount, the removal of social and environmental policy costs from bills in favour of general taxation, which is 15% of energy bills at the moment, and more support for energy debt write-off schemes and a lower price cap available to households on lower incomes or a social tariff. We will continue to do all we can to help people through this unprecedented cost of living crisis. We've invested more than £380 million in a package of targeted support for people. That included the first round of the Winter Fuel Support Scheme, a £200 payment for eligible low-income households. We extended that last winter to reach more households, and a £150 cost of living payment available to everyone in council tax bands A to D, and all those receiving support from the Council Tax Reduction Scheme in every council tax band. We also put a further 25 million available to local authorities in the discretionary fund. We know the difficulties these price increases have caused for many households in Wales, including those in rural areas who are dependent, unfortunately, on oil for space and water heating. Rural households are included within the scope of the Discretionary Assistance Fund, or the DAF, as everybody colloquially refers to it, which supports eligible off-grid homes for the cost of fuel and boiler repairs. We've extended DAF support through the summer and winter to the end of March 23, helping those households with up to £250 for a one-off oil payment or up to 3 payments of £70 for LPG. But the best way to safeguard low-income households from the perils of fuel poverty is to better insulate their homes. Adopting a fabric-first approach is a key feature of the latest iteration of the Warms Home programme, and we are looking at how we can best support households in the owner-occupier and private rented sectors. There are other mechanisms which can help and support, like the Early Alert Scheme delivered by Citizen Advice Cymru as well. The scheme is designed to support tenants at the first sign they are struggling to pay their rent or household bills. It provides additional access to the advice and support tenants need to manage their financial commitments. And we continue to work closely with local authorities at WLGA, RSL, CHC and CIH Cymru, as well as other partners, to welcome people fleeing Ukraine to Wales, and also to continue to support and settle those arriving under the other refugee schemes. I'm absolutely overwhelmed by the compassion and generosity of people across Wales, and I know that we can rely on you all to continue to support all of those seeking sanctuary. The Team Wales approach to delivering an extensive and urgent range of actions in response to the crisis in Ukraine, building on the experiences of the Afghan and Syrian schemes, is one of the many challenges where I've been overwhelmed by the willingness and ability of the housing sector. By working together, we as a government and you, our valued stakeholders and delivery partners, have risen to the challenges. We've responded with agile, collaborative, innovative action to face and overcome them. I'm continuing to be hugely impressed by the passion and commitment partners across the sector have shown, both corporately in your organizations, but actually individually, each individual person really bringing the same passion and commitment that has allowed us to rise and overcome so many recent challenges, and which will help us to prepare and deliver for a better future. I continue to tell everyone I can all the time how proud I am of the housing teams right across Wales. All of you working together have delivered such a lot already. Sometimes it is worth looking back and seeing how far we've travelled in the few short years that I've been the housing minister. Who would have thought we could do what we did in the pandemic? We continue to face those challenges, and I know I can continue to depend on your support and look forward to hearing more about your conversations during the remainder of this week to feed into this valuable work. So, diolch, David, diolch, everyone on the call. Thank you so much for having me, and I really hope it all goes really well.
Thank you, Minister. Cheers. Thank you. I know you've got to leave now.
Sadly.
That's right. Yes, no problem. We'll pick up some of the questions and we'll feed it back in at the end of the week. So thank you very much for opening our week. Right. I just wonder, there's a couple of questions there, which we knew, and the Minister had a very tight schedule, and we knew we could just, that's why we got you up early this morning on Monday morning to fit that. There was something there, Vic Cox asked about private owners and PRS and things like that. I think we're going to see some more on that over the next couple of years. There's a green paper out at the moment on private renting, and one of the things being discussed in there is rent caps, and should there be rent caps based on EPC rating? So those landlords who improve the warmth and the decarbonize their properties maybe would have more scope for rent increases and things like that. So it's a number of things kicking around at the moment on that, and I know I'm very fortunate today. We've got some people from Warm Wales here, and they've been putting in some of the chat about some of the issues there around some things being blocked by Westminster at the moment. So the Minister doesn't always have all the instruments available to make the changes that they want to, and it needs collaboration, as I say, between the Senedd and Westminster. Then why so I'm just going to read this quickly. How do we balance scaling up? Yeah, how do we balance the scaling up, the speed and the sheer size of the change? Well, we're talking about 237,000 social properties, 1.2 million PRS, and also listen and respect the needs for each tenant. And I think that's partly why we've tried to design this week some of the sessions. I think retrofit Tuesday, isn't it, Hannah? A number of sessions there around engaging the tenants in this challenge, some of the retrofit case studies, what we've seen so far and how the tenants have gone, because it hasn't all gone plain sailing. Let's be honest about this so far. For every success, there's been a couple of times when tenants have been maybe not fully informed or haven't necessarily seen the benefits, or yeah, there is some test and learn at the moment, and I think that's partly what we're going to see over this week, and that's part of the discussions, I think, isn't it? Right, I know Hannah's bursting. I'm going to open the next part of this, which is around our Tenant Pulse and launching our latest Tenant Pulse. I'll just set the scene for it and explain how we've got to this one, and some of the headlines on it. But Hannah's going to take you through some of the slides. It was her work, herself, Elizabeth. It was a TPAS team that delivered this, and so Hannah's going to show you some of the results. We'll be switching it on. Yona's probably in the background pressing something at the moment to make it live on our website, and so you can see the full report yourself at your own leisure. So
I'll go ahead and share the screen. Sorry, give me a second.
You're on. I'm seeing your speaker's view.
Okay.
So display settings at the top.
Sorry, I think it's blocking. My Zoom is blocking this. Okay. Does that work?
No, I'm still back No, don't worry, I'll do it. I'll do it. You
Okay.
stop sharing. Oh. Actually, I'm not sure I've got it here. Sorry. There we are. Sorry, everybody. First thing on a Monday morning, we don't always get.
And if you just switch it, then I think we're good.
Yeah. I've also lost the switch as well. Maybe you did. Sorry about this, everybody.
Potentially, if you move the screen onto your other screen, then you can switch it.
Oh yeah. I've lost everything now. No, I'm not doing this, Hannah. Just not showing us. Okay, what can you see? Still the.
Yeah, I can see the presentation just in regular. Sorry, everybody. We'll get this going in a second.
This was working. No, it was the same, isn't it? It's I'm gonna stop sharing. Start again.
I can see it regular.
I can't. I'm gonna just take out. You're still seeing it?
Yeah, I can see it speaker. Oh, something's changing.
Any better? No.
Oh, it just went off the screen. Now you're not sharing at all.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
Shall I try one more time?
Yeah. Sorry about this, everybody.
Okay, let me get it set up. Hold on.
What's going on here? Please do stop putting things into questions, though, while we're trying to do this.
What about that?
I've still got you. You're not on full view, but it doesn't matter. We'll have to just go ahead with it.
Sorry, what was that?
I think just go with it. I think it's not showing the full view, but
What about that?
see the slides.
What can you see now?
Just you're on slide view. It's fine. Let's just do it.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah, fine. Good. Right. Welcome, everybody. Sorry for that bit of a mix up there. Tenant Pulse. We're about to launch our latest Tenant Pulse. This time it was on net zero and energy efficiency. It's our second, I think, of doing this, or third. I think it's the third one. And it's important that we track and see what tenants' views are on energy efficiency and net zero at the moment. And it's certainly changing over the last couple of years as the energy crisis has kicked in, and hasn't really shown much scope for reducing yet. This was only done in the last month across tenants, across all the different tenures. Right, so let's get into it, shall we?
Yep.
So what is Tenant Pulse? It's a national platform for Wales to enable tenants and renters to give their views and experience. We do a lot of annual surveys, topical ones, specific ones as well. We've been doing some stuff with private renters in North Wales recently, a number of short surveys as well. So again, you're probably familiar with some of this, so we'll move on. So we also have a number of topical things on our website at any point, live open ones. We've got some private ones for private renters around communication at the moment. What actually bothers you as well and not bothers you as tenants. So do look on our website, just literally cheapest company Tenant Pulse, and you'll be directed straight to it. So if we move on, I think it's important is how we promote it, because I think that's relevant to the results. We send it to tenants who've signed up to our database. There's a big database now. Social landlords and tenant groups promote it themselves. We promote it on social media. But also, I think what makes us different is we use Instagram adverts. We use paid media adverts to reach those younger renters, to reach a more diverse number of tenants as well. We find it works really well. We've tried a number of things. We can move to the ads. You can see there the type of things we use, and we just find it's a great way of reaching people. As I say, I think there was about, I don't know how many, 22,000-3,000 people targeted over this last month. I think about 375 then clicked through the website and completed the survey, and we found it time and time again it works for us. So as I say, it's just something you might want to consider. When you look at Net Zero Pulse, this one, as I said, it's our third Net Zero Pulse. We want tenant views on net zero and changing behaviours. When it tests what people thought about heating solutions and financing, and I think that's something we wanted to discuss about. You know, rent, the relationship between rent and work done on your homes. So, and we think net zero is going to be the biggest challenge in Welsh housing, and that those tenants need that voice, and this is one way of doing it. So in terms of methodology, there was 20 multiple choice questions. All 22 areas in Wales were represented. 699 respondents. I don't know why we didn't leave it open another hour to get 700, but 699 respondents. It just messes my head that. This is and it was a big increase from the first one, which had only 302, and I think it beat year 2 as well. So it's growing each year, and as you would expect, in terms of population, the size, you know, the biggest responding areas were Cardiff, Vale, Glamorgan, Rhondda and Taf, and the lowest areas, Ynys Môn, Wrexham, Denbighshire. And again, that's a little bit different to some of the normal ones. I think Denbighshire normally is much further up there. But if we move on, what type of tenant? I think this is so important. What makes Tenant Pulse, I think, different to other people is we get that mix of housing association, local authority, private renters, some supported housing, and the other is pretty much shared owners, shared ownership. So I think it makes a real difference when we're looking at this. We can compare and contrast social housing to private tenants, even between housing association and local authorities. There's often difference in comms and things like that. So I think, I say, it's one of the things we're quite proud of. And if we look at that age breakdown, I say as you expect, it does get older, but I think it's because of the social housing element to it. That has a more older responding rate, and also when people move into social housing compared to private renters. So again, if you look at age breakdown here, big difference between private and social housing. In social housing, responding, you know, it was barely 7% of people of that age, whereas in private renting, how we target these people, you know, 29% were of that younger age. I think that's really important. The next is so some of the key themes. Actually, I'm going to hand over to Hannah. It's her report. Hannah, do you want to?
Sure, yeah, that's okay. So when we looked at this tenant Pulse report, we wanted to kind of break it down into different themes. And these are some of the themes that we found that kind of stuck out more than any others. So just to run through them quickly, the first one was tenant concern around energy bills. I don't think that comes as a major shock, especially with the cost of living crisis. So there's a lot of really interesting and necessary kind of words about how tenants were impacted by this cost of living crisis and how it looks to their energy bills. The second one was awareness and knowledge of energy performance certificates, otherwise known as EPC. Third was change behavior since the cost of living crisis. Again, it was really interesting and also sometimes hard to read about how tenants were coping with this cost of living crisis and, you know, trying to pay for bills while also trying to be mindful of climate change. And so I think this report kind of shows where that all meshes together. The fourth was landlord communication with tenants on net zero, which is a big reason why, you know, we're here involved in this space, is how tenants are being communicated with, what's working, how they want to be communicated with. And then the last, which is the massive question, is funding of net zero. How do tenants kind of see the funding working out? Is it on landlords? Is it on Welsh government? Is it on tenants? Is it increased rent? And so we had a few questions in the survey that kind of allowed respondents to expand on this idea. So to jump into it, we're going to look around first at tenant concerns around energy bills. So I thought that something really interesting was that we gave 5 sentences in one of the questions and asked respondents to rank them from least concerning to most concerning. And the 5 options included reducing home energy bills, keeping rents low, having safer communities, access to local services, and lastly, tackling climate change. And the top most concerning, I guess, sentence was that the priority was to reduce home energy bills. So 40% of total respondents said that their top priority was reducing their home energy bills. And also, I think it's interesting to note that climate change and tackling climate change came in third. So it was reducing home energy bills, second was keeping rents low, and then climate change. So I think that was also really interesting to see that, you know, it is still a big priority, and it did get ranked third out of 5. So really, really interesting to see. And then we wanted to look as well at EPC energy performance certificates. So if you're not aware, then EPC tells how energy efficient a property is, and it's ranked from A to G, A being the best and G being the worst. And so in this survey, 90% of total respondents said that they had seen an EPC chart before, but 74% said that they did not know their own property's EPC rating. And this was also really interesting. We talk about it in the conclusion a lot about what this means, and EPC can directly translate to how much you're paying in energy bills. And so I think that kind of the discrepancy and awareness around what your own EPC is can also impact how you view your energy bills. For instance, I have an EPC rated D house or flat. And so my energy bills might look a little bit different broken down than somebody with an EPC-A. But also I didn't know my own EPC rating until about a year ago. And so how does that kind of impact your own perceptions? So as I said about this EPC, we wanted to also look at tenure. And 44% of private renters knew their home's EPC rating, compared to 20% of housing association tenants and 23% of local authority tenants. And then talking about age group, the age group with the highest EPC awareness was 18 to 34-year-olds. The lowest was 65 and up, with only 20% stating that they knew their home's EPC rating. So then after this, we looked at change behaviors, and this was something that personally I was really interested to learn more about, and I'm sure that we can all relate in that we did at least one thing to try and reduce our bills. For me, I really tried reducing my electricity use, making sure I'm switching off my lights, just doing all of the basics that can sometimes just go by me. And so we had asked respondents if they had done any of the following. And we asked if they'd reduced heating, researched energy saving tips, gone to bed earlier, reduced electricity use, or anything else. And the others, we allowed respondents to kind of comment more thoroughly on their answers. And I think that this is where some of the really interesting comments to the report came through. So we found that 85% of respondents said that they'd reduce their heating more, whether that's the temperature set or for how long the system is running. And another really interesting thing that came out of this is that there was no statistically significant difference in response by age group or tenure type. And at least I know for David and I, we were talking about the results of the survey afterwards, and we both found it really surprising and interesting that there wasn't a difference in response based on tenure or age group. So it seems like most people are trying to reduce their heating. Here are some of the comments. I just wanted to pull out a few. This is just 3, but in our report, we have many other comments. And so if tenants had responded other, then they had a chance again to expand on their answer. So a few tenants, here's what they said. One said, I use a thermos to save boiling the kettle, reduce my showers, reduce my laundry. Heaters are off in the rooms that I'm not in. Another respondent said, using the cooker less often, buying meals that cook quicker, especially in an air fryer. And the last said, cooking outdoors on wood, wearing more layers, bed sharing with the children. So when we kind of were writing the conclusion, I think that these comments really kind of impacted significantly the tone of the report and what people are having to do in order to reduce bills. So we also had a chance for respondents to click that they have not made any changes, and here are some of the reasons as to why they have not made changes. So if one said, I need to have heating on due to my disability. Another said, my partner's undergoing chemotherapy, so her comfort is paramount. And the third said, I'm already carrying out all energy changes available while maintaining my health and sanity. And I think another one to mention is that some tenants have their energy bills included in the renting costs or overall costs. And so maybe there's not a need, or maybe they don't feel significantly impacted by energy bills at that time because of their details in their lease. So I think there's a lot of different reasons why some behaviors might not have been changed. So another question that we asked in the report is if respondents had made any of the following changes, more, less, or the same compared to the previous year. So with this, I really wanted to look at behaviors that had been changed in the past year with the cost of living crisis. So the 6 statements are shopped at charity shops, cooked at home, bought local produce, walked, cycled, or got a lift instead of driving yourself somewhere, used recycle and reuse sites, and changed shopping habits to reduce costs. So this one is where things got really interesting depending on age. So there were statistically significant differences in response depending on age to the following statements. So for tenants aged 25 to 34, they had shopped at charity shops, cooked at home, and changed shopping habits to reduce costs more compared to last year. All of those 3 things, it was consistent around people from age 25 to 34, but in comparison, those aged 55 and up had no changes compared to the previous year, except that they changed their shopping habits more to reduce costs. So this shows the differences in ages and what different age people are having to do in order to reduce their costs, or maybe changing behaviors and practices more than the previous year. I know myself, I definitely relate to having shopped at charity shops, cooked more at home, and changed my shopping habits more. And so I'm sure that many of us can relate to that as well. So it's interesting seeing the differences in age and how that affects behaviors during a cost of living crisis. So then we also wanted to look at landlord communication, and we wanted to really know what form of communication had been used most. And when we talk about communication, it's not just, hey, we're going to be putting in heat pumps next year, we're going to be putting solar PV in 6 months. We wanted to know, had they been even had an introduction session about net zero, and what level of communication had been done, and if any. And interestingly enough, 86% of total respondents had not received any form of communication from their landlord. So this includes work that is planning to be done, or work that might be done, or again, introductory sessions on what net zero even is. And to plug, we at TPAS do give introductory sessions to net zero. So if you're interested in any of those, we can definitely help you out with that. But this was really fascinating because for tenants that had received some sort of communication around net zero, 32% had received an information leaflet on their doorstep or through their mailbox. 26% had received an email about net zero, and 25% had someone come to their door to tell them about the works. And then we also wanted to give a comment box and opportunities for tenants to expand on their answers. And I won't, these are kind of long quotations, so I won't read them all. But I thought that the first one was really interesting. And they kind of talked about the work that had been done or events that they had attended from their landlord to learn more about net zero and decarbonization. And so the first one says, the house has been insulated. I question the green aspect of the installation. No consideration was taken for the environment during the works, and the materials were thrown into skips at an alarming rate. 80% of each bag was thrown away. And I think that this one's interesting to pull. I mean, there's so many different reasons as to, you know, maybe they were taking them to a recycling center and it just didn't look that way at first. I mean, you don't want to make any too big of assumptions. There's different factors that could come into play in this. But that was also really interesting part that me and David have been discussing recently about what happens after the products come to the end of life. Are they being recycled, thrown to the skip, and contributing to landfill? And even the installation, is it, you know, what are the materials used and how does that impact the environment as well? And then the next one says, a briefing event occurred for the initial installation of the heat pump, but the later installation had no consultation. And then lastly, I'll just read this one out too. I've only attended TPAS Cymru events on net zero. It was mentioned in the latest newsletter. So these are just some of the ways that landlords are communicating with their tenants about net zero. And so maybe the most, I don't know, interesting or wanted question is, who is paying for net zero? And it's a big bill that comes with net zero. And some say, it depends on who you talk to or the figures, some say, and I've read this the most, that it can cost roughly £5 billion for UK homes to be retrofitted in the next 5 years. So how is this being paid for? As I mentioned before, do we raise rents or does Welsh government provide more funding? And so we wanted to know from respondents and tenants where they thought the money should be coming from. So 43% of respondents said that tenants should not have to pay for low carbon homes. 25% said that they would pay higher rents if there was a decrease in energy bills. And 24% said that they do not trust that the energy savings would be more than the rent increase. And only 7% said that they would pay higher rents for more low carbon homes. So I think that this kind of shows where tenants and respondents are feeling right now. And there was a level of distrust I noticed in that they feel that the rent increase would not justify the energy bill decrease. So one quote that I wanted to pick out was, I wouldn't be able to afford more rent or anything. I am struggling now. And I think that this rings true for tenants all over the country. So a few key conclusions. We're going to go into some conclusions and then next steps and a few things that we're going to be doing at TPAS after TPAS Cymru after this report, since it's been launched today, which is very exciting. But in conclusion, achieving net zero housing will cost billions of pounds, but the money will be wasted if tenants are not using these systems to their full potential and are instead looking to other heating solutions to reduce costs. And this was something that I had a bit of an epiphany about because we're paying millions and billions of pounds to get these systems into housing and to impact and benefit tenants. And in some cases, tenants are not seeing those benefits. And in other ways, there's not knowledge that's being shared about how to use these systems correctly and in a way that will benefit tenants. So I think that's a key piece of the puzzle to note. And then it's also interesting to note that age did not impact the ranking of concerns, which was one of the first questions that I went over. But we can conclude that tenants are having to prioritize costs, which can be felt daily, as opposed to climate change, which can feel like an issue that is too far away to currently consider. And I think that also that relationship kind of does show where the priorities lie and where they have to lie. And I mean, it depends on who you ask about you know, climate change and whatnot, but it does to many people seem like a further away issue than right now, today, tomorrow, as opposed to I have to pay my electricity bill today and don't know how to do that. So the last two key conclusions that I'll just go over is there's a level of distrust from tenants about net zero, and tenants do not feel that they will directly benefit from the installation of low carbon solutions. I went over this a few minutes ago, and this is just a conclusion that I noticed. It might not ring true for everybody, but throughout the report, I did pick up on themes and tones of distrust and tenants feeling like they're not being informed to the highest extent, which is something that I hear all the time, even in sessions or when I go to different social landlords and talk with staff and tenants. So it's just something to note. And then lastly, every tenant has different needs, communication styles, and ways of living in their homes. And unless each tenant is engaged, there will not be a net zero Wales. I think that this is something that is being realized more and more and talked about more and more. Like I said before, if we're putting in so much to get these heating solutions into homes, then we need to also be talking, communicating with tenants who will be living there with the heating systems every single day. And, you know, we just making sure that tenants are benefiting the most from these systems, which is supposed to be a major pull and benefit of net zero. So we always like to have recommendations at the end of our tenant pulse report. And so these are 5 recommendations that we have. And also we'll be sharing this report. It actually has been shared already with Welsh Government, and we'll be sharing it with major key people in Welsh housing. So this will be shared with them. And these are things that we hope will be taken further. So we want more case studies to be shared. Learning about tenant experience is key. This is something that I'm working with the Optimized Retrofit program on, who will be having a session about tomorrow. And we're really working together to find the best way that case studies can be shared and that tenants can actually learn about how other people are finding the systems. For example, a heat pump, is it working for them? What is it day to day, and what does that look like? And I think that we're gonna hopefully be seeing more case studies being shared in the near future. Second, landlords should be communicating with tenants on net zero works from the beginning. And we advocate at TPAS Cymru for landlords to be communicating with tenants from the beginning, during, after, and after that. And making sure that there's a system that works in place for both the tenant and landlord is what I will advocate for forever. Third, TPAS Cymru would like to see a stronger focus and inclusion of tenant voice and engagement guidelines in WHQS 2023. So again, please join us for that session this afternoon with the WHQS team. They'll hopefully answer some of your questions and then also give you a chance to, have your say in WHQS. Fourth, social landlords should be offering information sessions or places for tenants to engage with net zero. This kind of leads back to number 2. And then lastly, we strongly recommend developing relationships with tenants prior to attempting any form of decarbonization to their homes. So this kind of just wraps up all of the points that we've said before, making sure that tenants are communicated with, consulted with, engaged with, and included in the conversation. So what are TPAS Cymru's next steps? So like I said, the Pulse report should be live on our website now. So go give it a read and also share it and let us know what you think about it. We definitely want to make the Pulse reports as inclusive and as best as they can be. So let us know any feedback that you have. So the first thing that we're going to be doing, or one of the things that we'll be doing, is running focus groups. So this is something really exciting that is somewhat new to our Pulse reports. And with Net Zero, we of course want to be having communication with tenants and hearing feedback. So we've created 3 focus groups. So one being tenants who have had net zero works done to their home. The second being tenants who have a strong interest in low carbon housing solutions. And third, tenants who want to feedback and give opinion on landlord communications with tenants on net zero. So we'll be sending out invites to these focus groups to those who signed up within the Tenant Pulse survey. And we're hoping that this can cultivate communication and conversation about what tenants are looking for. I think this kind of started at our November conference, where it was in person, and I was able to talk with some tenants about why they want to be involved in net zero, how they want to be involved. And I think it was maybe a 5-minute conversation that sparked training with their landlord and net zero events with their landlord. And so I think those conversations can really become something bigger. So that's what these focus groups are there for. Second, we'll be sending out the survey. We'll be sending it out to all of the respondents who completed the survey and opted to receive a copy of the report. And then, like I said, we've also sent this report to key decision makers across the housing sector. And so we want to hear back from them, and we're advocating for net zero. And we hope that this report can offer some insight as to how tenants are feeling right now about net zero. And lastly, we're going to be giving presentations. So this is, I guess, in some form a presentation about Tenant Pulse, but we're constantly looking for opportunities to present and discuss the findings within the sector. And oh, I just noticed a spelling error. We're going to discuss the findings within the sector and media to ensure stakeholders absorb and act on the report. And I think that's another key part of it, is we're not making these surveys and reports just for the fun of it. We really want to use the insight and discussions to create change and also advocate for tenants and be there as the tenant voice. So yeah, if you want to request a session on this report, just contact that email, or you can also contact David or myself. And we're very interested to know your views on this report, and especially what action you took as a result. And then last thing to mention is we did have a prize draw, and I'm not sure if any of the prize draw winners are here, but these are the tenants who won the prize draw, and they'll be getting their prizes sent to them soon, if not already. So I think that that is all of the presentation that I have on Pulse. So if we do have any questions, I don't know if I wasn't looking at the chat, but if we do have any questions, then we can tackle those right now.
I can pick them up. Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. I know Hannah put a lot of work into that, and it's really fresh. And in terms of the data, she turned it around fast for this week. So I would encourage people to have a look at it. And in terms of following up, anyone's got any questions around splits between housing association, local authorities, things like that, if it's not clear in the report, just let us know. I know some of you contacted us before on that. So I want to just pick up some of the questions in there. That's okay, Hannah. I think there was one in the chat I'm going to start with, which was Josh was from TAF was talking about the jargon that we use, you know, the EPCs, the net retrofit. I think you did even a TikTok on retrofit. It was one of the most popular ones, wasn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Not a 70s keep fit class. You know, should we be talking more about energy reduction and bills? And I think for me, Josh, to that question was some of the first work that was done in Swansea University and things like that didn't always show a reduction in energy. I know it should, but decarbonisation, you know, taking out gas combi boilers, things like that, putting other solutions in, didn't always. Partly, I think, because we got an energy crisis, so the unit of electricity was going up quite a bit. And also some of the people who had some of the first works ended up using more electricity because they saw it as having almost free power, or it was more efficient and things like that. So some of you might remember the Home Bargains hot tubs of 2020. You know, a lot of people started heating things like hot tubs and stuff like that, and consequently bills went up quite a bit. So I do get you. We've agonized over this a lot, even just what we call this week. But we're wary about some of the energy reduction bills, even though that should be the case, because it hasn't always been the case so far. So I don't know if Hannah, there's anything you want to add on that. So no, that's right.
Yeah, no,
So,
I think that's all good.
There's some questions here as well. Someone asked about what's the biggest challenge to tenants when it comes to net zero being done on their home. I think for me, there's a couple of things here. Hannah and myself went to see some, when it comes to new builds, I think there's a challenge there about when tenants who are moving into new builds are actually told about stuff. We were on a site for Christmas where we were saying, oh, we just show them on the day they're moving in. And it's like, what, when they're moving boxes and trying to get everything sorted, and you can put that one upstairs and things like that. And you're trying to show them the control panels of a heat pump and things like this. And I think there's something there about some of the biggest challenges, I think, for net zero are the ongoing care afterwards. And I think Hannah's report mentions that, you know, this isn't something you just show people once. It's afterwards, how they're getting on with it, what optimization, is there any data? So some of the solutions that exist have data behind it. You can see, and experts can look at that and see how they can optimize their home better. And also even just down to the solutions versus the home lifestyle. There's clever people out there going, right, okay, is it a heat pump we need? Is it a different hydrogen? All these different solutions. Actually, the people in there are going to make, I think, the success or failure of those homes. And I think people need to be considered when we're putting plans together for what the solution is for each pathway to zero, each home's net zero solution.
Yeah, to add on that a little bit, there's been a comment, I don't know if everybody can see it, but from somebody about there's a need to consider post-works engagement. And I think that this is another big thing to tackle, and something that we're getting calls and questions about all the time at our office is people are wondering, is a video the best way? You know, this is how the best way to operate your heat pump. Is it a session? Is it door to door afterwards? And what's the best way for tenants to be able to look back on any tips? So I definitely agree that post-work engagement is also crucial and sometimes forgot about.
Yeah. And there was a question there about do you have any tips on how to talk to tenants about decarb? I don't know if you want to go first or shall I? Or...
I don't mind. I can do it. I think that something that I notice is any tips about talking with tenants about decarb is first have the conversation. It seems like a really simple thing to do, but I think it can be overlooked until much later, until it's not as proactive right now as it is reactive. And I think that's a switch that we need to make. Instead of being reactive about it, being proactive and talking with tenants and seeing what would work and what wouldn't work. And I know many of times some tenants will go into discussions with their landlord about decarb or net zero, and they'll raise something that was not thought about before, and they could notice it because they're going to be living with it from the get-go. And so I think just having those conversations and I don't know, just having an open and casual discussion is what I think would be beneficial, but it depends.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's that whole journey, isn't it? I think getting a group of tenants on board at the beginning really helps with education tours as well, going to see some of these things. They can point out different things that maybe the professionals haven't noticed. I think door knocking as well, you know, that community engagement. I know there's a number of now TAF who've done that door knocking. I think it's really important as well. And I think the other challenge, I think, talk to tenants, and there's this theme of we're going to need to look at where the boundaries are in terms of responsibility between the landlord and tenants, in terms of the contract, maintenance, things like this. There was an interesting case study came up last week that was in the English Ombudsman around solar PV. So some of you may have had solar PV, or you will have it on your homes, and often it's roof mounted. And one of the things that happens is nests built in there. Sometimes pigeons, in this case was pigeons in England, wasn't it? And they went to the Ombudsman because the landlord said, no, it's not our responsibility. The mess it was creating and all the disruption from having these nests under the PV. And the Ombudsman in England didn't necessarily agree, and it went back and forth, and the landlord had to eventually put some wire around, it's called, you know, some mesh, and pay compensation to the tenants. And the landlord originally was very, very confident that wasn't their responsibility. And I think we're going to need to see some evolution around our contracts, where the lines are when it comes to net zero solutions, because we're going to see some new issues and some new challenges. And that's where discussion comes in. You know. I noticed in the chat somebody said, where can I find the results of the latest Pulse survey on your website, please? We'll make sure it's in the link. I don't know if anyone's out there in the rest of the TPAS team, whether you can put it in there. But if you, I would imagine if you Google TPAS Cymru Tenant Pulse, it should come up there. But we'll make sure we're putting that in the next 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So anything else on people's questions? What have we got here? Yeah, Carl, interesting one. Firstly, the use of contract holders. I'm very much against the term contract holders. It was never meant to be used public. I know that's a discussion I've had with a landlord recently who are using it. I don't think it's a helpful term, but I know where you come from in the purpose of this. Contract holders aren't going to agree to something that potentially costs them more money, particularly if the work's going to be invasive. It shouldn't be costing them more money if we're doing this right. If we are committed to find the right solution for that home, we should see a reduction in those bills. You know, that's the I think if tenants are paying more afterwards, then I think something's gone wrong there. And we're not in control of, admittedly, of the unit price of electricity, but we do need to make them warmer, more insulated, so that when they do use a unit of electricity, even if it is more expensive, it should bring the bills down. But yeah, that's why we need case studies. We need sharing of experience, and why we're trying to do that through this week and other things that we're doing at TPAS. Anything else, Hannah, you see in there?
No, I don't think so. I think all good.
Yeah, Addy saying there, it'd be great if houses would include their contractors in the bid to educate tenants. Yeah, I think you're right. Is it Sonon? The people who make batteries, they
Yep.
made a really good video, simple video with Pobble, just about how to reset the battery afterwards, because some of the battery, like all things in life, we've all had to switch on and switch off and switch on again. Literally a 1 minute video. It was just so, I looked at it, I was like, oh, I quite like that. We're going to need contractors, suppliers to make post-care material that's accessible, multiple languages, easy to understand. It could be video, it could be literature. We're going to need a number of these things, and contractors definitely got a part to play in it. As long as those contractors are able to communicate with tenants effectively. Some of them aren't always, they send their technical people along, and maybe that's not their skill set. But yeah, I agree with you, Addy, totally. Anything else anyone wants to ask? We have about a quarter of an hour, but I don't like keeping people for the sake of it. Whilst you're having to think if there's anything on there, we will send the link out. Anna, could you just maybe see if it's live and put it in the chat? Yeah. What I would mention is this afternoon, it's WHQS session with Welsh Government, and we asked them to speak, but then they came back and said, actually, we're still fine-tuning part of WHQS, and we genuinely would like to discuss it with you and get your views in that session. So there's a real chance for you to still have a say in WHQS too, but also learn about some of the bigger things that are coming out as part of that. So that's a session this afternoon. The same link works that you came in this morning, works this afternoon. So do have a look at that. And tomorrow, retrofit day, customer experience day, and two great themes tomorrow. So
All right, I think I have the link here.
Yeah.
Let me put it in the chat, and then everybody can take a look.
Addy's also mentioning about transparent procurement as well. I think tenants being involved in that procurement, I think it's also quite important, as well as these technical people who make those decisions. And I think more transparency, that commitment from suppliers as to how they will engage, how will they do their post-care implementation, how will they track how tenants are getting on with the solutions, so that they do benefit from it. And then I think if the tenants benefit it, the supplier can get better case studies and better evidence for their solutions. So yeah, definitely. Good point, Addy. Right.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, as we said, just let us know your thoughts. Please send us an email if you have any thoughts or comments about the Tenant Pulse report, and we're really interested to see what you think about it.
Yeah. Good. In which case, unless anyone's got anything else, Hannah, I think
then we'll see you at 2 p.m. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming this morning. There was a good session. The minister gave us real hope and optimism of the sheer scale and commitment that people are involved in. And I hope you get a chance to read in more detail Hannah's Pulse and let us know if you want more detail or want us to present somewhere. We want this report shared and people acting on it. So thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. We'll close this session.